want to make one other point about the connection between idealist philosophy and educational practice, and that is involves an issue that we in the contemporary world wrestle with, just as teachers have wrestled with for centuries. And that is the issue of what we do in response to the fact that we have in our classes students of dramatically different abilities. We have some students whom we know seem to be off the charts intelligence, others who seem much slower and find it a struggle to get through the materials. Some students rather, who can concentrate on academic studies, and other students who seem, even though they may be bright, not at all disengaged with the material, and it's very hard for them to get through the material. So what I want to do is talk about that issue of tracking, which naturally comes up when we start talking about students of different ability levels from an idealist perspective, and make a connection to kind of mainstream idealist politics over the centuries. And here I want to use initially Plato as my working example, Plato being the most influential historically of all of the idealists. Now, I mentioned in Plato's Republic that he presents a full theory of philosophy with its implications for education, and all of that is in the service of trying to construct, at least on paper, an ideal political system from his particular perspective. And in his resulting political system, there's a direct connection to his views on human nature, and those views on human nature have very important implications for education for the right kind of a political system. It's true to say in the case of Plato that Plato is a dualist. He believes that the mind and the body are separable, in principle, stuffs. But then when you look at his theory of mind, he has a tripartite breakdown, that he sees the mind as having, so to speak, within it three constituencies of different focuses, different interests, and different ability level. So if we look within the mind, right, or the psyche, right, for Plato, he says there are really three things that are going on here. One, of course, is that we have various appetites. Right? One thing that presents ourselves within our minds that is constantly going on is various desires, right, that we have for bodily things, right? We get hungry and we feel a certain kind of urge. That's not just a physical urge, it also has a psychological manifestation. We have a desire for food, we have desires that are sexual in orientation, and we have desires for say, destruction, for wrecking things. You know, think of a little kid who's just built or maybe his sister has just built a sandcastle at the beach. You know, the little boy who delights in coming along and jumping on it and destroying. So we have an appetite, say, for destruction in that particular case. Plato also says, I'm going to leave a gap here, that we have in our psyche, right, a capacity for reason, capacity for thinking abstractly, thinking in principle, thinking about longer-term consequences of various sorts of things and so forth. We also have a third aspect that I'm going to use this translation here, the spirited, right, element. And here Plato is thinking about our passions, right, or our emotions, but it's not simply our passions that are directed toward physicalistic, right, sorts of things. Here it might be our passion for glory, our passion for honor, or our ability to be courageous, and so forth. And that's not just, you know, a dry, intellectually desiccated experience. It's not something that is immediately tied to physical satisfaction. It is in that sense more abstracted, but it's a passion, and in many cases it has a values, right, component to it. All right, so Plato then has a tripart division of the psyche. We have these three aspects or three faculties, and they all exist in all human beings. But Plato says it's not the case that all three elements of the psyche are equally powerful, equally capable of being developed in all human beings. Instead, what we find is that in some people, this is the strongest and most dominant part of their psyche. In others, this is the dominant and most important part of their psyche. And in other people, and actually the vast majority of the population for Plato, this is the most dominant and important to them part of their psyche. And so Plato says there's really three different kinds of souls. You have what he called the iron-souled people. He uses a metal or a metallurgical analogy here. You have iron-souled people, and they are basically a whole lot of appetites. They might get spirited and worked up about certain sorts of things, but they're kind of weak-minded. They don't have very much going on intellectually, right, so to speak. You will, at the other end of the spectrum, of course, have people who are smart as a whip. They can think through things. They're whizzes at math. They love doing philosophy. And they find that it comes naturally to them, and correspondingly their physical appetites or their interest in those sorts of things are much diminished, and they're of course going to be passionate, but the kinds of things that they're passionate of are going to be intellectual kinds of matters. And then you're going to have other kinds of people who are not appetitive in this particular sense, and they're not particularly going to be the top students in your class and go on to graduate school and so forth, but they do have a lot of passion. They do like adventure. They do like glory. They're always ready to go out there and mix it up, and they're interested in experiencing the big wide world and so forth. All right. These are the iron-souled people, these are the silver-souled people then, and these are the gold-souled people. Now, the labels, of course, give away that Plato thinks these are the best, these are the second best, and these are the third best. But nonetheless, what we have in the case of Plato is a theory about human nature that is nativistic. That is to say, people are born a certain way with the mixes of their souls preset, and it's not something that's really going to change significantly no matter what kind of acculturation that goes on or what the education we expose them to is. Instead, what should go on in the education process is that the teachers should be sensitive to this issue and be talent scouting or spotting what kind of student they're dealing with. Am I dealing with a student who's mostly iron, or am I dealing with a student who's mostly gold, or am I dealing with a student who is mostly spirited?